Hi, Linda here. In my last video, for anybody who watched that, I had mentioned something about going through mental illness during my perimenopause, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. When I went through perimenopause when I was 40, I started when I was like 46 years old, which I guess has been like 22 years ago, so it's been a while. Back then, the only thing I knew about perimenopause, I thought it was just like hot flashes and maybe irregular periods and stuff. Nobody had ever mentioned how much mental illness could be involved with the whole change that us women go through. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and when I was diagnosed with that, they told me that once you're bipolar, you're always bipolar. I'm going to be on the medicine for life. And that didn't come to pass. I got off the medicine as I was getting to the end of my perimenopause when my monthlies started like getting erratic. And I never felt better. For 6 years I went to hell though. I'll start at the beginning and just like give you a summary of what I went through for the 6 years as a bipolar patient. But it started when I was 46 years old. That was the year I also left my husband. So it was a few months after that, I remember, it started. I had a monthly period that just wouldn't shut off. I'd always been one who had periods that lasted a full 7 days, and they were pretty heavy for the first 3 days or so. But this one wouldn't shut off. I mean, by day 9, it was still heavy, and I was starting to feel just tired and drained and stuff. So I went to the doctor, and my primary care sent me to a gynecologist and she took me right away, and she did an exam, and then she gave me progestin, it was called. She gave me 15 days of progestin that stopped the bleeding, and that was it for that. I never really thought much about that, but later on I found out that's a sign of perimenopause, but nobody ever told me that. I don't know. And shortly after that, I was sitting one time in my office. I worked in a corporate office. I was in a cubby, with a bunch of cubbies around me and people working. But there was one time I was just sitting there working, minding my own business, and all of a sudden I heard a voice telling me, "Your life isn't worth anything. You need to end it." And I was like looking around like, what happened? What happened? Who said that? But everybody was just working, totally ignoring me. And I just like brushed it off and said, I don't know. But then I started hearing that same voice saying the same thing a few times over the next couple weeks. And I started getting really depressed and anxious, and it was really weird, It's like I'm going crazy. There's something wrong with me, so I decided to I called my insurance company, and they referred me to a therapist. So I said, okay, let's go see a therapist. I think I really need somebody if I'm hearing voices and it's telling me to kill myself. So I went to her, and when I tell her my story and how I was feeling and stuff like that, she said I really should go see a psychiatrist too. She wanted me to continue seeing her, but she wanted me to see the psychiatrist too. She thought it would be better, considering what I was going through. So I went to see the psychiatrist. He asked me a whole bunch of questions. One of them included, do you have any family members with a mental illness? And I had to tell them, yes, I have a sister who's bipolar. Anyway, he diagnosed me as bipolar, which I don't know. Looking back on it, I do wonder, just because I was hearing voices, that can mean a few different things, But anyway, then I started going on this whole regimen of all the medications, and, over 6 years' time, I was changing them. The one constant in the medications was the lithium. That medication, I started out a certain dose and went up over time because it would work, and then it wouldn't work, and then it would work, and it wouldn't work, and, I didn't know what was going on. And plus, I started adding medications here and there, depression medications, sleep medications, all this other crap. And it was bad. After all that, I hate medications. I don't want nothing to do with prescription medications. I do take 2 that I have to take, and they aren't bad. But none of them are psychiatric medications. I don't ever want to touch another psychiatric medication. And that's not to say nobody should ever get on psychiatric medications. Some people do need them, and some people don't get all the side effects I got from them either. They did help for a while in the beginning, but I still wasn't totally myself. I mean, and it was over time. Oh, I should also mention that after she gave me the progestin for my period that wouldn't stop, I all of a sudden had periods that were totally regular, 3 days long, every month. This is another reason I never thought I was on perimenopause during this whole time. Because that's what I thought was a sign, and hey, I had more regular periods than I had my whole life. They were lighter and easier. But anyway, to continue on, throughout these 6 years, I did, despite being bipolar, and I don't like to say that because I wasn't truly bipolar. I didn't have to take the medications for life the way they told me I was going to. I got off of them after 6 years when I did start having periods that were becoming irregular, being spaced apart. But throughout most of the time, I did not know that I was in perimenopause. All I knew was I had this strange mental illness. And I have to admit, I really was fighting it a lot of the time. It was the medications that caused more symptoms than I think the actual bipolar thing did. Because it was like my mind was all fuzzy. I was having a hard time remembering things. And I put it down to aging. I'm getting older. I guess that's the way it's going to be. But it wasn't. Getting off the medication made me realize that, it was the medications causing a lot of this stuff. And besides having a full-time job during all this time, I was actually going to college part-time. That wasn't easy either. I was taking online courses, though, and they were 5-week courses, which were really intense. There was a lot to do in 5 weeks. But it did give me times in between, if I wasn't feeling totally with it, I needed a break. And there were times where it definitely was that. There were times when I really started going nuts with depression or my manic episodes, during the class, and it was all I could do to get through it. And it was really weird. School was hard during that time. There were times when I would take a course, and I had a 3.6 grade point average, so it was sort of like, I did good well. I got all A's and B's, but it was sort of like, there were times when I'd take a course and I get to the end of the course and I'd get an A or B, but all of a sudden I try to think back, what did I learn during that course? And I wouldn't remember a thing. I couldn't remember, what did I learn? It was bad. Probably because I was trying to learn so much in such a short period of time. It's just going into short-term memory and then just like disappearing at the end of the course. I don't know. I don't think that was the way to go to college. But I did get my degree while I was going through all this. And I got diagnosed with bipolar, and I read a lot about bipolar disorder after I was diagnosed because I wanted to learn as much as I could about it and what I could do and everything and what was going to happen. And I did have a lot of the symptoms of being bipolar. So I don't know, can somebody, I guess people can go bipolar while they're going through perimenopause. Maybe I had the bipolar gene in me and it never came out until I went through perimenopause, since I had a sister that had it, and it is supposedly hereditary in a lot of ways. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know why this is or anything. It just happened. And it's like, school was bad. Work was bad too. I was lucky to have a really good corporate job with some good benefits, because there were a number of times I had to take short-term disability due to just being, I don't know. There was one time I was working in my office. I'm like one of these people that's normally very laid back, just go with the flow, whatever, Things didn't bother me. I got along with pretty much everybody. and try to see the good in everybody. But it was like I started getting into these really angry things. I don't know. Where there was one time I was in my boss's office, and I just asked him a question, and he put me down, or he said no or whatever. I can't even remember what the question was, but I just remember getting all mad, and I wanted to jump over this desk and like strangle him. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so unlike me. But it scared me because it made me think, oh my gosh, what can I do? It's like, I'm not going to do something stupid in this. I don't want to lose my job, because it's like all that. Without a job, I'd be hard pressed to find another one with my mental capabilities at that point. But it's like that was one of the times I went on short-term disability. There was another time I went through depression where I was really suicidal and thinking nothing but dark thoughts. I talked a little bit about that in my last video, where I talked about God coming to me at the end of that. But that was really bad too, and I wanted to take off during that time, but my therapist said she didn't want me to take so much time off. She said, I'll give you a part-time excuse to take off, but I don't want you sitting in bed thinking suicidal thoughts, all day long. She wanted me in work, so I had to work like 4 hours a day, and it wasn't easy. Not when I was feeling like that. But I could see her point looking back on it. It's like, because she gave me a referral to one of the mental facilities, hospitals near me in Philadelphia, but she told me that if you go there, they're only going to keep you 3 days, because that's all insurance is going to pay for. And I was like, really? What's the point of going there? I was like, what's 3 days going to do? They're going to get me in there and drug me, put on all sorts of drugs. There was no way I wanted to go there. But I don't know. It's just like really weird that you could be like that, and you can only go in for 3 days into a mental facility. I mean, no wonder there's so many mental patients running around. Some of them mass murdering and whatever like that. If that's really the way the insurance companies are, that's ridiculous. Yet it's like you have to do something in order to get good mental care like that. But by then it's too late. You've already done something horrible. I don't know. That's just the way our thing is. And I had other symptoms of bipolar from what I read too. It was like at 46, in my late 40s there, this is embarrassing, but I had a really high libido. It's like all I could think about, just about 24 hours a day, was probably sex. And it was like, as I said, this is embarrassing. It was bad though. I hated it. I did get into like an affair with my next door neighbor. It was easy. He was next door. I didn't have to go far. But it was just like, I just couldn't get enough. I couldn't get it out of my brain. I hated it. I'll tell you, by the end of the 5 or 6 years, when I started getting back to Christ, I started praying to God, please, 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 help me get rid of this libido. I don't want it anymore. And I did. Once I got rid of it, yeah, the libido went down, and now I don't hardly have any libido whatsoever. So the Lord answered my prayers anyway. But anyway, another thing. What else? There was a time when my spending got totally out of control, and I was buying all kinds of stuff for the kitchen and the house. And I started getting really into like emo music and stuff like that, because that's the sort of mindset I was in. And I used to have all these dark posters up on my walls and listen to all this emo music and videos and whatever. It was really weird. I spent too much money on too much weird stuff. I did. And I did go a little bit into debt. I wound up having to take a loan out of my 401k just to help pay the credit cards off. And then that was it. And that's totally unlike me too, because I was usually one who was pretty good with my spending. I wouldn't go totally overboard. I mean, I'm not super frugal, but I'm not super bad either with my spending. But that is part of being bipolar from everything I read too. And when I saw this one psychiatrist, she was telling me, she was surprised because at the time I was vegan. I was trying to take care of myself. I wanted to get healthy, and I was really trying to fight it in different ways like that. Trying to find different things to make me feel better and, get better. And this one psychiatrist I saw said, that's very unusual. Most people who are bipolar have addictions, like to drugs or alcohol or whatever, and I wouldn't do any of that stuff. So it's sort of like, there's something right there that was saying that, okay, I'm not really bipolar, I'm just diagnosed bipolar, and it's total misdiagnosis. Anyway, and this was just a really bad 6 years. I mean, I could go on and on about everything that happened because there was all kinds of things that went on in my life during that time. Somehow I managed to get through it all. My co-workers and my bosses put up with me somehow and always took me back. But I don't know. I guess I wasn't totally bad. I did get some work done. But I don't know. And anyway, I wanted to basically do this video to let people know that when you go into perimenopause, you can have mental illness. I've since found that I'm not the only one. I mean, towards the end of it, I found this book called Menopause and Madness. I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it. I'll try to include it in the description here if anybody wants to check it out. But she went through a lot of research. She was having mental problems too, right about the time she was starting perimenopause. But she had good doctors. She was up in New York City and had all these good doctors, and they realized it wasn't a mental illness per se. They put her on estrogen. It's the thing with low estrogen. When you get really low estrogen, it can really affect your mental capabilities and bring on a mental illness, and that's no doubt what happened to me. But that's just the way. I'm sorry. My voice is going out. But I just wanted to just let people know that this can happen, and I've heard it happen. I even heard, if you watch videos on YouTube, I've heard Oprah and Maria Shriver were on talking about their mental illnesses when they went through it, and they didn't, I guess they had good doctors to tell them that it was part of perimenopause, or maybe they just knew they were on perimenopause. I didn't even know I was on perimenopause. I mean, if I went by just what I knew about perimenopause, I only had perimenopause for a year. It was a year of irregular periods, that's all and I didn't have any hot flashes. The only hot flashes I had was when I was getting off one of the worst of the medications they had put me on. I was waking up after 4 hours with horrible, well, actually I guess it was night sweats, but night sweats and acid reflux and all that. That's a whole nother story, the medications and all their side effects, and why I hate them. I don't ever want to go back on them again. But all this mental illness disappeared at the very end, when the period started going away and I went into actual menopause. And I'm so thankful for that. I thank God every day, and I say, please don't let me go through any of that. I mean, I've since had mild depressions, but they're usually situational from something that was going on in my life that I was able to bring myself out of. Nothing really bad, and I'm thankful. I mean, I still get anxiety too. But those are kind of situational too anymore. It's not like at one point I was agoraphobic and fearful of leaving the house. In the house and at work I was fine. Any place else, forget it, didn't want to go. But anyway, I'm all done with that. And I hope nobody ever has to go through what I went through during perimenopause, but something tells me I'm not the only one. And people should know about it. Doctors should know about it. Why didn't doctors tell me? I mean, why when I had the period that wouldn't shut off, why didn't they tell me that was a sign of perimenopause? Is it such a hush-hush word that people can't tell you that? And I had both women. I mean, I had my primary care was a woman and the gynecologist was a woman. she couldn't tell me, that, okay, this is a sign of you're going into perimenopause or whatever. But I hear that word is getting out, and I think it was Halle Berry who went into Washington to try to get it out that doctors need to learn more about the change, because she had problems too with something that the doctors were totally misdiagnosing her with. And so I hope it's getting out. More people need to know what's going on. And I felt so alone. I was like going through all this mental illness, and I felt alone. I don't know. But the music, I like the emo music. That made me not feel so alone, because I listened to that, and I don't know, that made me feel better. Music is good. Music is good for everything, no matter what you're going through. There's a type of music that will help you out. Anyway, I'm going on and on. This is probably going to be my longest video ever, I think. And it could go longer. But I'm going to wrap up for now, and I just want everybody to beware. If you haven't gone through perimenopause, or you're going through it and you have some really bad mental illness, you're not alone. And sometimes just HRT will help, instead of having to go through all I did with all the medicines and doctor's appointments and whatever. But I don't know, you need a doctor who knows what they're talking about and knows about, mental illness with perimenopause. Anyway, as I said, I'm getting out of here. Until next time, ciao.